President Mahama has put forward. But this is also to tell us and to remind us as a country. Take a look at those points that have been put there. Most of them are steeped in basic common sense, in good practice in terms of debt management around the globe. In fact, not even debt management, but rather in any setting at all. If let's say you go to play ball, back in those days when we were kids, you go to play ball and you hurt yourself. The first thing you will sit down there, your colleagues will get some very fine sand and put it over the wound. What is it trying to do? Stop the bleeding. In fact, the body itself reacts in the same manner. The moment you get a wound somewhere, why do you see the body will try and create some platelets around it to basically clot the blood around to stop the blood stop you bleeding to death via a small wound. So when you are in a deep ditch, as we famously say, when you are in a pit, you stop digging. So if you look at when President Mahama says the first thing we do is an immediate moratorium on non-concessional borrowing. That is the most basic common sense that has eluded this government. So much so that we are all feeling refreshed that at last President Mahama, as he always does, has brought yet again the thought leadership that is needed for this country. We have a country that we are in a debt crisis, and yet our president is fixated on how to get back to the Euro bonds to borrow more for kinky parties. And so it is quite refreshing. And once you go through all of the 8 points that President Mahama had put forward, I would struggle to see any Ghanaian with a head on their neck who is clued up on, not even, you don't have to be economically savvy to know this. These are basic things that we need to do. And that's why you see that every single speaker and expert in your studio this morning, from my brother David in there, to Professor Lord, down Professor Gachi, every single one of them, you can see the excitement, you can see the enthusiasm in our voice, because it looks like we are finding our mojo back. We are getting that safe pair of hands back in charge. We are getting that common sense approach coming back into the way our economies run. Because where we sit now, this massive debt crisis, this huge debt burden on us, it's what is driving where we can go, what we can do, and what we cannot do. Every single facet of Ghanaian life today is driven by that. I mean, without the debt crisis, you wouldn't have domestic, you don't have the appropriate people's private assets through this dubious domestic debt exchange program. You wouldn't have a lot of cash. You wouldn't have a lot of institutions struggling to survive. Why? Because this debt crisis is not just the Euro bond alone, but the capping of all statutory funds. That means we have whittled away any fiscal capacity at those micro levels. We are looking at the misuse of funds from Akufo-Addo to GNPC for items that have nothing to do with their core mandate. And basically, the country is not even on its knees. We are completely flat. We are lying flat. And so all of these measures, and if we go through them one by one, these are common sense measures, good practice debt management strategies that countries that are seriously looking to grow and not be hobbled by debt will engage. I started with the one on the moratorium, my brother, and stop me if I'm going too far. But that particular one, I mean, you and I know, if I get to a point where I'm struggling to pay my debts, the first thing I should start doing is what? Stopping borrowing. But you see government still trying to borrow here and there and still falling into that misguided view of, we just signed a loan contract for this. Still sending loan contracts to Parliament. Meanwhile, your loan book is huge. I did make a comparison between us and Zambia not long ago. And I said, as soon as Zambia managed to unlock some form of debt relief, the next thing they did is they went and canceled a $2 billion loan that was on their books that they had signed and they were entitled to it, but for which they had not yet drawn down. That is the mark of a responsible country. And this is what President Mahama is saying. And the other gratifying thing, you see, when someone is a prophet, it's almost like this is President Mahama's I told you so moment. Look at the 8 points, and you'll find that there is very little new in them. These are things that President Mahama did when he was president, which we, unfortunately, the good people of Ghana, did not appreciate. The way we never appreciated President Osajifo Nkrumah when he was building the Tamamoto Way, the Tama Township, the Akusubu Dam. We never appreciated him. We said he was wasting our money. He was creating electricity in excess of demand. Today, we are going back, Sankofa, to the same thing that President Mahama was doing, which Admittedly, out of our own ignorance, we didn't appreciate and we thought that he was not allowing money to be in the system. These guys have opened the flags for money to be in the system. Look at where our inflation hit 54%. Examples I'm giving here. He says on the 4th point, we will limit central bank financing of government. And as Professor Gachi rightly said, in 2015-2016, President Mahama ran zero financing from the central bank, even though the law allowed him to borrow up to 5% of the previous year's revenue. He was financially disciplined enough to restrict it to zero financing. People say, oh, but why are you not borrowing when you needed to do stuff? He still did what he needed to do. When you look at how the MPP has destroyed the central bank, you will understand why President Mahama limited it to zero borrowing from the central bank, because it will come back and haunt you. President Mahama talks about what? Making sure that, for example, we are really going to reestablish a sinking fund. Again, it's a no-brainer. President Mahama was the first president in the history of Ghana to establish a sinking fund, which is another basic economic common sense. I go to take a loan. I know I will pay it back. Do I wait till the day I have to pay back and then they send me the bill for payment or the interest itinerary comes to you, then I start running around looking for money? It is just sensible that you say, I know I'm going to pay 10 cedis next year in 10 months. So let me start putting 1 cedi away. 1 cedi every month, 1 cedi every month. By the 10th month, it's 10 cedi. Then I pay. It is easier to save 1 cedi each month than to wait till month 10 and say, I need to pay 10 cedis when all your total income is probably 20 cedi. You will find that you are hitting 50%. Again, this government went against that common sense, and you see where we are. When you get your point, you can't pay debts because you didn't make provision for it. What that rainy day fund we all talk about is basically like your savings fund that allows you to pay off. Another basic common sense thing that President Mahama put in place, which was working, which these people came and took away. President Mahama talks about making sure that projects will be self-financing. And my brother David in the studio listed some of them. Excellent. Ghana Gas Project is saving us over $500 million every year in gas imports, because without it, we would have been spending another $500 million every year to import gas. You can see how that has improved, at least has helped the city and brought in or reduced the rate at which we sell city to get dollar to buy gas. That was self-financing. We talked about Terminal 3. That was self-financing. In fact, if you look at the Meridian Port Authorities deal that we had to expand or triple the capacity of Tema Port, government didn't spend a penny, but it all was self-financing, paying for itself. So you see that President Mahama engaged in massive infrastructure, and yet that did not take a toll on our debt profile. It did not. We only ended up 56% debt to GDP ratio, which is very healthy, because each time you had to do a massive project, we looked at it and said, is it economically viable? Can it be self-financed? And we came up with the creative ways and means by which we were able to develop this country. And so when President Mahama even talks about the big push, and people say, where is he going to get the money from? I say to them, where did he get the money for Ameri? That is another example. And my brother David did mention some. Ameri is another example of a project that paid for itself. Ghana never paid 1 peso in advance for it. And that is the standard model of financing energy projects in the world. Okay. You basically get the investor, you assure them that, look, this is the amount we will pay you per megawatt. Go and find your resources, build your plant. Once you start operating and you are powering into the system, for each megawatt you power in, we will pay you this. Okay. We remove the risk of project failure. We remove the risk of uncompleted projects. We remove the risk of dumping a lot of state resources into a project when we are not getting the benefits. These are some of the basic things that President Mahama did. But I call them basic because we should be doing them. But they're actually genius of President Mahama. Okay. And so when I look at that 8-point plan, it is a solid plan to get just these 8 measures alone. And they're achievable because he's done them before. He's simply saying, I'm a master of what I have done. These guys are clueless. When I'm back, we're going back to basics. Sankofa, and we're solving that problem. So I'm very much delighted that President Mahama brought them forward.
Well, Chairman, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Chairman Conrad Dumbah is UK-Ireland Chairman of the National Democratic Congress.